And that. And welcome everyone. We got some Overwatch for you today. It's been a little minute since that's been on the production. I'm here. My name's Jeremy Flanasek. I go by Error in Game. This right here with me is Kyle Smith, going by Buwezo in game. And yeah, we're here to commentate your varsity Overwatch game tonight. So should be a good game. I'm expecting a lot of good things from these guys.
Yeah, I mean, I'm personally really excited for this game because I played Overwatch in the closed beta and I've taken a couple years off, but I'm excited to finally make a great return and get to watch some great gameplay.
I was going to say, and I've been playing with our academy team, so I've been
Yeah.
also working with a lot of these guys just because I know them. I happen to like be in the room with a lot of them.
Yeah.
So seeing a lot of their progress over the season has been very interesting. And speaking of over the season, tonight's going to be very interesting. This
That
is the
is.
first official that our team has played on the new patch, which if you're not a person who keeps up with Overwatch, massive overarching changes. The adjustments were made to health pools across the yard. Everybody has slightly increased health, but also damage dealers (DPS) have a buff where a 20% decrease in heals on people that they do damage to for 2 seconds.
And that's a passive effect. Yeah.
That is a passive effect, so it's not a specific ability that they need to use. It is just if they damage someone, that person will receive a chunk off healing for 2 seconds, which 2 seconds doesn't seem like a lot, but in a game like this, it's massive. And it's one of those things where I have been, with the Acad team, we've been talking about this, and the Premier team has been working on this even more, where they're trying to figure out what is the play for this new meta, because it's essentially a complete shift. A lot of your sustained healing is going to be completely nullified at this point. So it's a lot about burst healing, and it's a lot about playing more safe or more hyper aggro. You can't play 50-50. You have to commit to a style and just send it.
And another interesting factor that's come with those changes is the changes to projectiles, because now every projectile in the game is bigger. And that completely changes how the game feels for players. And so I'm really interested to see how that affects the meta and how it's going to get shaken up.
Yeah, it's going to be interesting. I know I was able to talk with our head coach / player for the team. Andreas will be going by Silent in game. You'll see him a lot on main support. And I was talking to him about the comps that are going to be happening tonight. And one of the interesting things that I saw was, as to go off of that projectile, in every role that we have, there's at least one person who is playing a projectile-based character. We have a lot of looking like Orisa and Ram, some Genji and Soj, and a bit of Lucio in there. So it's going to be interesting to see how those increased projectiles are going to affect, especially those players, because I know on our DPS, our players who play a lot of Genji and a lot of Soj, those guys were putting out great output when the projectiles were smaller. So you've made the game easier for them.
Right.
They're going to get great output. Especially, I'm excited for Silem in game.
Oh, yeah.
His name's Kai. He's our Genji player. The man is a demon in the server. He is insane. So I'm excited.
I'm also really excited to see how this Genji, because Genji's blade got to change as well.
Yeah.
I'm very interested to see how that lower damage per swing, but more swings. For those who aren't aware, Genji's ultimate is he pulls out a sword and he basically just starts slicing and dicing. And I'm really interested to see how the lower damage per slice, but more overall slices works out in the gameplay.
I am excited to see that. I think with the changes with like the reduced healing, I don't think you'll feel it as much. I think it'll feel similar, but I think the more slices is going to affect a little bit of muscle memory. So right now, what we're relying on is our players to have kind of killed that muscle memory in the week that they've had since the patch dropped, to kind of get that feel. But the other thing that's interesting is the projectile adjustment was a very recent hotfix, like 2 days ago, I think?
Yeah, just about.
So it's going to be interesting to see, because again, you now have the adjustment where you have to deal with all the health, but then it's felt slightly easier over the past 2 days. So you've built up a muscle memory for one thing, and now you're shifting to a different. So it's going to be very interesting to see how all of these players adapt. And another big thing to keep an eye out for when we are looking towards those big overarching storylines for the night, one of those big things is going to be the team itself. The team right now is a 7-man rotating core. We have a handful of people who are staying in. We have Satni, who's going to be our tank player, and we have Silent, who's going to be playing a lot of main support. But among that, the remaining 5 have a little bit of flipping around. We have one guy, Epic MU, who will be staying in, but he usually flips between DPS and support depending on how the comp plays. So we're going to be seeing a lot of rotating of the extra 4 players, and it's going to be interesting to see how they get picked and chosen. I know I was talking to them before, and they said that it was a very map-dependent thing. One of the things that these guys will be looking towards for that LAN is understanding if they're not going to be able to play with this rotating 7, who they're going to solidify as their core 5. Because I don't believe they'll be able to pull the full rotating 7 out on LAN. It'll be a little bit more tricky. So I think they're going to have to rely on more of a core 5. So something that'll be interesting, especially as we broadcast more of these and we look more into the future, is looking at if there is more of a select 5 as we get closer and closer to LAN, especially after qualification.
Yeah, I mean, I absolutely agree. I feel like 7 is just, it might end up being an awkward number for them. I really hope that they can make it work out. But again, I think I agree. It'll be interesting to see what direction the team decides to go in as they continue to play in this new patch, this new season.
I'm very excited. I think this team has a lot of great potential. They're one of our teams that throughout the entire semester, throughout the entire year, we've been looking towards them as one of the teams, especially this season, to be looking towards that LAN qualification. We have a lot of very skilled players, but there's also a core that has worked together for a very long time. So they have a very good read of how to play the game. And even with these very large structural changes, we're looking towards these teams being able to still output the mass numbers that they need to, still being able to output the mass results that they need to. And they have decided for this semester to solely focus on this GLEC season. They have just spent time playing for this league. They are not playing around with any other leagues. They are solely focusing here. So it's going to be interesting to see how all of that prep is going to be going into these games, because they haven't had any other leagues to practice these. They've just been playing scrims and playing just GLEC officials, focusing on the LAN, because the grand finale, the focus for this season for all of our teams in GLEC is not only making GLEC, but winning. Because if you win, you go to a finals conference in Texas.
Yeah. And I would say, I think that it would, potential qualification to a LAN, that would be our team's first LAN qualification, correct?
It would be one of,
yeah.
Yes.
And so that would be very, very exciting, both from a program perspective, but also specifically for this Overwatch team. I think that it would be it's a very, very cool opportunity.
Yeah. As I say, we have a lot of players who are very experienced in the sense that they have played a lot, but as far as actual tournament experience, we have very few who have that on LAN in person. We have some people who have that experience, like our coach Silent is currently a tier 3 player, so he is playing just below what was Challengers, which is just below what was the main league. With the restructuring of the league and how that all is going to play out, it's going to be interesting to see kind of how everything adjusts, to see where his team ends up playing. But also, he's a person who has been playing at a very high level for a very long period of time. So it's going to be interesting to look towards his structure and his system and seeing how he's able to bring that into this team that is very LAN hungry, but is not as LAN proven as potentially some of these other teams. And as we look towards the opening rosters for this first match, we are going to be looking at the order of everyone, and although you cannot see, we'll be swapping over to that very soon, especially once it looks like the teams are going to be getting ready, although it looks like there's a minor swap on the enemy side. We are going to be seeing Satiny come out, initially playing that tank. We're going to be looking at Xylem and X-God, who Xylem is our cracked Genji player. X-God is a very consistent Soj player. So seeing those two in the main Deeps roles, and then we're going to be looking towards Epic, MU, and Silent on those support roles, if all is to stay the way that it was initially outlined, which it appears that is going to be the way. So it's going to be interesting to see this initial start. This is very similar to the roster of last semester, just a simple 1-for-1 swap of Vixinia, that is Rin, swapped out for Silent, just a simple 1-1. So it's going to be interesting to look forward and see what exactly the play is going to be.
Yeah, and it looks like Cleary may have landed, which is the opposing team. Looks like Cleary may have landed on their roster. They're looking with a roster of Pancake, Renegade, Flynn, Grusha, and Smacks. So it'll be an interesting matchup for sure. And it looks like the first map may be the Antarctic Peninsula, but I'm unsure if that is just a placeholder or if they've officially decided on the map already.
I know that that's a placeholder, but also I know that this team has played a decent amount of Antarctic in not only series as this semester, but also last semester.
All right.
So they're not a team that fears this map whatsoever. I know I have some people from Academy and some people from other teams that I've talked to who are not the biggest fans of this map, but this is a team that does not stray away from that. So we very easily could see ourselves going to Antarctic for the start.
All right.
As we're waiting for all the teams to get ready, we're just going to be hanging out and waiting around. That's fair. As I say, we'll do our best to translate as much as we can. I understand that we have some family members in the chat here who have less experience in the game, which, you know, it happens. You know, it is what it is. So we'll do our best to translate as much as we can. There are some things that it's just going to be concepts that we'll probably break down between maps, but I know we'll do our best in game. So looking towards this first point, it's a pretty standard opener, especially for this league. I think like every league we play in has this opener. It's a map mode called Control, and the simplest way is that there is 3 versions of the map, and you have to win 2 out of the 3 versions. And for each one, it's a smaller map with a central control point, and you have to capture that and hold it for, I want to say it's 100 seconds.
That's correct.
As I say, it's 100%. I forget if it's a second per or a percent per second or whatnot. So we're going to be looking towards that. So this mode is relatively fast, but it's also a very intense mode, because as you look towards these larger scale fights, one of the important things with those larger scale fights is making sure that if you are on the side that is defending, you want them to be long, and you want them to be extremely drawn. You want them to be extremely tiring for both sides. You want the enemy to have to regroup if they are going to even get close to winning. And if you're attacking, you want them to be fast, and you want them to be decisive. You don't want to be dropping a lot of people when you're retaking point, so that way you can have a defense that is ready and pushed up a little bit to fight the enemy as they respawn and as they are ready to try to take back the control point. So it's going to be a very interesting game mode to watch. It's a nice push and pull, and it's a nice tempo starter. It's a very good map for pretty much all styles of play, but it's a good way to get warm and get yourself into the series.
Yeah, and an interesting element of Control too is that the only way that you can gain capture progress for your own team is if you, well, control the point, and the only way you can control the point is if there's no one else from the enemy team on it. And
Yes.
so you don't have control of the point unless you are able to clear everybody else off that point. And so, like you mentioned, it does create that interesting push and pull where you want to, if you and your team start to lose that fight, you want to make sure that, you know, you're okay, are we going to back out, or are we going to try to stick this out? And it's a very, very interesting dynamic of, okay, maybe we should give up on this fight and try to make sure that we can come back stronger as a team.
It's also a very confidence-based game mode. It's one of those things where those fights, you are going to see that come out. And as we talk about seeing it come out, it looks like we are going to be getting into our first map, which is going to be Antarctic Peninsula. So as we look towards these first comps, as we look towards our starts, it's going to be interesting to see what exactly BW ends up pulling out. If the order is the way that I understand it, there could be a 1-for-1 swap in our DPS roles, although I could be very much mistaken about that. And I could be just completely saying utter nonsense into the view. So as we look ahead towards map 1, it is going to be the expected comp for this. We're going to be looking towards a Sojourn, a Genji, a Junker Queen, a Lucio, and a Moira, which is very interesting.
That is interesting. I was just about to say that.
For those who are unaware, Silent normally plays a character called Baptiste, who will most likely see later into the series, who has a lot of abilities that are very good for keeping his team alive outside of just healing. He has a thing that he can place down that's very good for keeping people alive. It's an immortality heal, so he physically cannot die over there. And playing Moira is very interesting to see how he can a lot of his utility. As you can see right now, a lot of that is going to be fast swap, damage, and heal. But also this is so just push the heal into the enemy team and try to take this with that immortality heal down, we're definitely looking at a good amount of sustain, and we're going to see Team Silo get the first kill and go for another kill. Try to get it tank. A lot of damage on some sort of concurrency. Right there, but will be getting it right after dying. And now we're going to see BW, because they pushed the enemy so far back, they were able to get that first capture point. And now we're going to see BW. Even on the defense, a lot of it is going to be about getting that stall and making sure that we are able to control the point and keep the pressure on Cleary.
Yeah, I think it's going to be really interesting because both sides are playing this kind of rush style comp where they really just want to go into that other team and want to like be right on top of the team and try to get their goals. And as we can see here, Pancake is a snipe into Silent. And so the way that these competitions work is these teams are going to be fighting really, really close to each other.
Yep. And as we see that first fight going down, we're going to be seeing BW lose the point, keeping a decent amount of percentage, almost 40 after first tap. It's not incredibly like high, but it is not a very bad place to start. And we're going to be looking towards that regroup. We only had a few people die off of that push, so with everyone still alive, we're going to be looking towards a little bit of early pressure, waiting for the rest of the team there, and then we should be seeing some sort of initiate off of this initial damage. We're seeing a lot of good poke here from BW. With a lot of BW just slightly off of their ult, we might be seeing some big game-changing abilities getting popped here. We've got a lot of damage going left and right. A 1-for-1 trade, which is going to be the BW tank for Cleary's heals. However, the ult pop from BW will be looking to sustain this fight. And we've got a little bit of a back and forth, but it's ultimately looking like BW is going to be down, losing that team fight and having to play the regroup and the retry.
Hello. I mean, that said, I do think that they are in a great position for this next retake fight. As their ult economy, which means that the ultimates they have look to be better, I would argue. They do have that Clara ultimate, Coalescence, which is basically a bunch of healing and a little bit of damage.
Time for the reckoning! This is something now.
And as we're seeing the push and pull here with BW, we're going to see a lot of the things that we talked about with that early, with one player sticking on the point, trying to play contest as much as possible, who will end up getting taken down. And that's BW with 4 alive, taking back control of the point here. Losing only 1 in that team fight is incredibly good, especially because it was a very full wipe for Cleary. So Cleary is going to have their team back, and they're going to be looking for that regroup fight very fast. And as we see, BW is actually going to be playing this even more aggressive, trying to play into the team fight from Cleary, trying to not let them gather and get some sort of plan. We've got a little bit of damage here coming out from Satney, who's going to be looping around. And as we see, that is going to be Satney dropping. So that's a tank for BW out. And with this fight, it's looking very scrappy here. No real kills back and forth except for another pick onto the side of BW. So at this point, it's looking like BW is just going to be looking to give and regroup. They're going to be looking for one more team fight win. And as we said, if you're not on point, that ticker is going to go, and even when you get on point, until you've captured it, it's going to go. So once that ticker reaches 99, we're going to hit what's called overtime, and where the point needs to be clear for a certain period of time before Cleary wins. So you're going to see BW pushing on here, and what looks a little bit of a rushed fashion, they're going to be trying to take this point down last second, because they do not want to let Cleary get that final point.
Player on the opposing team had his ultimate, and that ultimate is very, very difficult because it gives really, really large amount of shielding to his own team, so it makes your team very, very difficult to kill. And so that fight was always going to be very, very difficult for BW. But that said, we can.
If you can outthink your opponent, it's easy to outfight them.
Yeah, it's important to make sure that you are moving beyond this. You're moving forward towards the next point, and you're going to be looking towards whatever is going to be next for your team. You don't want to be caught up on the losses of the last map. You want to be moving forward towards whatever is going to be next. And as we look towards the next set of Antarctic Peninsula, this is a different map. It's going to be a very similar color scheme just because it's a lot of ice. But that's the way that it is. As we're seeing here, BW is trying to play this rush style that their comp is set up for, and they're trying to play it into what it's best for, which is playing fast and playing into the enemy team's line.
It's very interesting that there are no comp switches, so nobody on either team switched what character they're playing. So that means that we're seeing a very similar matchup here as Rusha and Flynn take the first 2 kills, which does put BW at a huge disadvantage. However, unfortunately, that fight does seem to be lost, so we'll have to go to the next one.
Yeah. It's going to be a full team wipe here coming on to BW, so we're going to be looking to see not necessarily a character swap, but a swap in game plan. BW has been trying a lot of similar stuff, and although it has been working, it's been very back and forth. So we need to see BW look towards some sort of shift up if they want to capture this point cleanly and look to pushing it towards a third part of this map.
And once again, there is something a little bit concerning that I'm seeing here. Well, obviously, losing your first pick is very unfortunate. Getting first one teammate killed there, but Grusha is really just building up his beat as Lucio much faster than Epic Moo at this point, and so that's going to be really hard to overcome as BW because, as I mentioned before, that ultimate is very powerful.
Yes, it's a very instant health increase on everyone within a very large range that's on your team. So it's incredibly good if your team is just losing a fight. It's a button that you can easily press and everyone almost instantly gets that health back. And as we look towards this next fight, one of the things that I'm seeing a lot that is going to be important, they're going to need to look toward, is going to be these first picks. BW is giving up a lot of firsts. They're able to get the return frags very well, but the issue is that they're just giving up those initials. So if they can potentially start looking towards getting those initials and playing that aggression just to the right level, it could be looking towards a very good start.
I think it's very interesting that they decided to commit the Coalescence to this fight after they seem to be down to me, but it looks like it might be working for them.
It is going to be working. BW is going to be able to take that capture right before Cleary is able to re-aggress. They really get enough picks to call that. And X-God here in the backline able to pick up one of Rip. However, that will be a ult from X-God being able to keep the pressure alive, getting another 2 clicks, and this is why we have him playing this Soj. It's applying a ton of pressure, and we're going to see that new Genji Blade coming out, which is going to be popped.
Surprising to me.
In my opinion, it is a little wasteful. It's it applies a lot of pressure, but it's not incredibly useful. They were close enough to their spawn to be able to fall back incredibly fast.
Yeah, I'm really surprised to see that. I wonder almost if he pressed it on accident, to be honest with you.
It might have
because
been.
they were very far in the opposing territory there. As we see, this fight is beginning to break out. Cleary is popping their Ramatra ult right off the bat, and there is a lot of power.
The Ramatra ult, for those who are unaware, is in a set like size ult. It's a relatively constant health drain on anyone that's inside. So it's going to just slowly eat away at your health, and it's going to stay alive for as long as he's able to keep people within that range.
It also turns him into Mike Tyson.
It does too. That is true. That is true. And we see BW was able to get 60 off of that cap, but they need to win this next team fight. And their team fights have been a little bit shaky, so we need to see some sort of initiative, and we need to see BW be getting this first kill. As we start this.
Silent is 3% off his Coalescence. If he can build it before someone gets picked, they can stay in this fight. He pops it.
And it is going to be the pop from Silent, applying that aggression. Again, the instant return pick, not the initial pick, but the return from this team has been the name of the game here. And a 2-1 on point, we're going to be looking towards BW, potentially getting something. All that is left is Silent and Satney. However, with that ult popped, it is going to be very hard for BW to throw something together. And that is a tight but unfortunate 2-0 start to the series. Now, for those of you who are newer to Overwatch and newer to competitive especially, it is not just a one game, it is a series of games. So you have to win 3 out of a set of 5. So that was the first game mode that we played. So for the series, BW is only down 0-1. It's a very returnable scoreline. It's a stat line that the Academy team has overcome twice now, with instant 3 map streaks directly back. So as we look towards map 2, I think big takeaways from that are DPS players in those were ready. They were cooking. They were getting the damage that they needed to. However, it was a lot of the initial picks that were becoming the problems. BW was giving up a lot of those firsts and were unable to capitalize off of the space that they were taking, or the space that they were able to take on those returns. So we need to see BW being a little bit more, not necessarily aggressive, but more decisive in their fights. A lot of the things that we discussed about those first maps, we needed to see those first picks coming out for BW. We needed to see those being more decisive. And at the start, we haven't really seen that. We've seen a little bit of back and forth, which worked. It got them some results. But if we're going to have them get the results that we're looking for, if we're looking towards those confident wins, we're going to need to see those first picks turn more to the side of BW and less to the side of Cleary. Because playing a man down is never great in this game, especially because a lot of those first picks ended up being on Satiny, our tank.
Right.
Which is a very, very important role. They're the characters that have the most health. They have a very strong damage output, but they're also often the most commanding in fights. They're going to be setting the pace and setting the tempo. Although the DPSs are able to get the kills, able to get a lot of the confirms, the tanks are the ones who are doing a lot of the brute work. And with these changes that we've discussed earlier, the decrease in heals that can go on to certain people, these fights need to be decisive, especially because BW is choosing to play a rush style. They're playing fast, they are playing into the fight, and they need their fights to be more decisive because they do not have as much sustain as they would in something like a poke comp, where you're playing more far back, you're going to have a lot more centralized healing, and you're going to be able to keep everyone up for longer overall.
And speaking of that rush playstyle, it looks like the next map we're going into here is King's Row, which is a hybrid map. So what that means is there's going to be a team attacking and there's going to be a team defending. And that attacking team is going to be going to try to capture a point, very similar to Control, which is the game mode we were just playing. And then after that, if they successfully capture that point, they'll have to push a payload, which basically means that they are going to be moving a cart to try to get it to the endpoint. So as we can see here, here's that first capture point. It'll be more apparent once the game starts what that capture point looks like. But something interesting about King's Row in particular is that it's very, very well oriented to that rush playstyle that BW wanted to play last round, because of the fact that this map does have a lot of short sight lines, and so there's a lot of very, very tight corners. So rush is a very, very successful strategy on this map, and I'm wondering if this Widowmaker pick is going to be sustained, or if this is just to try to see if they can take someone's head clean off right off the bat.
I was going to say, from what I've seen a lot of BW do from these plays, the Widowmaker has been a pick by XGod here. It's been a very popular pick for this opening, simply because of this opening has a very open sight line going into it. So while we can play this rush with 4, the 5th is going to be playing back and trying to punish anybody who's playing on height. And as they see someone up height, that initial shot is going to be missing, and we're going to be looking towards that Soj swap. And while that happens, the rest of the BW team has moved up and they pushed into this corner. We're going to be seeing Silence doing a lot of brunt force fighting and looking for some picks here.
In trouble.
Potentially able to hit that Sojourn, although it looks like the confirm is going to be saved for a little bit. But as we see, a lot of the things, the issues that we were talking about in that first map, nowhere to be found. BW loses only 1 on that initial fight. They are able to capture the point decisively. And now we're going to be looking towards that payload style where they're going to be a cart pushing. So this is where the style that BW was playing, the rush style, is going to be a little bit more abstract. They're not going to be rushing a singular point with singular lines. They're going to be playing more around this moving objective, as we're going to be seeing. As we're going to be seeing a little bit behind, it should be coming out very soon. And we see Satiny there, a little bit of an overextend potential issue, but it's early days on this point, and we're seeing a little bit of a BW losing 2 of those players, 2 of the biggest playmakers. So we're going to be seeing them backing off and looking for a regroup here, trying to get everybody back up, back into the fight.
And pushing a payload is always a very, very interesting game of push and pull, because you want to make sure that you have someone on that cart, on that this truck that we're seeing right here, because we want to make sure that that doesn't move if there's no one standing on it. But you also need to be making sure that you're controlling the map, controlling space. And so, as we can see here, Satiny pops his ultimate, his Juggernaut. Yeah, the fight just breaks out. The Ramatra ultimate seems to be doing more work.
The unfortunate response on that was that the Ramatra ultimate was popped, and then as soon as Satiny popped his ultimate, which, for those of you who don't know, will spread forward in a straight line, it will do a little bit of damage, not only initially but over time, but it will apply an effect to anybody that's caught in its way on the enemy team, where they will not be able to get healed. So it's an incredibly good fight-turning ultimate. However, there was a response with the Lucio ult, a very big just burst in health that was a almost instant response. And as we're seeing BW here, it seems that they're getting tripped up in this opening corridor. So we're going to see XGod swap onto that Widow, potentially looking for some space or potentially some initial picks, something that they feel that the Brawl has not been finding. So either a potential call from them or a call from the more fight calling IGL of Silent. However, as we look to this extend in, it's going to be the Lucio ult popped in,
starting to pop off here.
Asylum popping his ult, but he will be unable to find much more as the enemy team popped Ashe ult, Bob, which is just this big robot who takes up a lot of space and does a good amount of damage. And as we see, although trades were relatively even, it's going to be BW losing the fight. Because of that Bob placement, they were unable to get a lot of pressure and a lot of sustained pressure on that payload. However, it appears that because they were able to get enough, even though there was that respawn, Cleary is going to be dropping back, so BW is able to take this point and get a little bit of that push forward. So 3 minutes left on the clock. BW is rounding this first big corner, the about halfway point on this first second of the payload, and they're going to be looking towards a lot of significant damage here. And as we see that ultimate from Junker Queen come out, is going to find 2, and Silent is going to be finding the 3rd, and that's a 4th, and this right there is a full team wipe. That is BW responding back significantly. After a scrappy fight, they were able to put it all together and just plow through Cleary.
And looking at the ultimate economy here, it's interesting to notice that this might be a really, really difficult team fight that's coming up for BW, because they are facing 3 ultimates, but Silent may have actually helped us guarantee this point, and it looks like he does with the early kill onto Lucio. I was going to say Cleary have 3 major ultimates coming up, but that doesn't even matter. They've already captured the point.
Yeah, and with the way the BW is playing, they're not even letting them get it out. If anything, Cleary is going to have to pop their ult, not as a survivability mechanic, but more as just a being able to get out of their spawn. It's not going to be used to take control of the point or be able to really confirm any kills. It's just going to be so they can leave their spawn area. It's going to be so they are able to apply at least some pressure. BW is going to be taking their foot off the gas. They're going to be coming back, playing a little bit more of the guaranteed play, you know, the percentage play, of getting a little bit of push onto that payload. But if I'm Cleary, I'm looking towards my 3 ults, and I'm looking to make some sort of play here, which it looks like they are going to be doing. After finding the pick onto XGod, they're going to be popping the Ramatra ult to apply pressure onto the site, putting some ensure down that they have some control. However, what could have been wrestled back will be immediately shut down by Cleary as they retake control of that payload.
And it's interesting to notice that Silent did use his Baptiste ultimate in that fight, which is basically a window that doubles damage and healing that goes through it for BW. He did end up committing it to that previous fight, and I wonder if he was trying to turn the tide, which I think was an interesting, it was a difficult call there. It looks like Silent was popping his Genji blade here, and we're also using Epic Blue's Lucio beat. There's just a lot of ultimates going on in this fight, and there's a lot of chaos, and this is Overwatch right there. That is definitely Overwatch.
That is purely Overwatch gameplay right there. People are just dying, things are just happening, and it's very hard to keep up with. But as we look towards 2 minutes left on the timeline, we've got XGod, who's incredibly close to their ult, which, as we've seen before, they're a monster with. If they pull it right and they're able to play it well, they are just able to apply so much pressure with it. And it looks like they're going to have it for this next team fight. I'd also be looking towards Satney, who's popping his ult right here. So it's going to pull out the Lucio ult in response, but as we look towards Cleary's top, there is nothing that they have in response for this. So XGod is going to find one and is going to look towards pressure from the rest of the ult. They're going to get picks onto the rest, but unable to find any other kills. And as I say that, Silent in the backline is able to find one, and XGod continues to apply pressure. So BW has wrestled this point control back, and now Epic MU looking to get a little bit of people back onto that point so they can apply this final bit of pressure to get that clean capture.
And I think it's going to be a little bit difficult here for BW to try to close this out, because Cleary does spawn so close to the payload. It might be very difficult to get this over the line. They're really going to have to make sure they wipe the whole team, which to this point, it appears that they have a chance. It's 4v4 at the moment. However, that Ramatra ult may seal this last fight, and it may... I actually shouldn't even say last fight. There's still 40 seconds left in the round. So BW might have a chance here to come back and push if they are able to just regroup.
It appears that they are going to be trying to do what they can, but as we see, Cleary is going to be pushing up, looking for that final fight. BW is grouping, and they're going to be going for one final push, and they need this to be decisive if they look to win. So they're going to be looking towards the approach. It's going to be Satney leading the charge, the early knife out on, which is going to apply a little bit of damage onto whoever it hits. And as we round that corner, it's going to be a very clean fight. There's very few ults. Cleary has the ult here that they are going to be popping, which is going to provide a lot of stall, and I think that is almost going to seal the deal as it does here. Now, although BW was not able to capture the full third point, it was still an incredibly good push. Getting it, I think it was 4 meters off, if I remember
that sounds
correctly.
About right to me. Yeah.
An almost complete capture here, which is going to be very good as we look towards this next point here. Now, we're going to be looking towards seeing what BW is going to be playing on their defense, and as we've seen, they don't really have a big affinity for swapping around comps depending on sides. They like to have comps per map.
Right. And I think it's going to be, I think that there is a lot of positive things to be happy about here for BW, because typically this first point is very, very difficult to capture as an offensive team, and so winning that on your first fight is amazing. And so I think that is actually going to give them a huge advantage while playing defense here, because while Cleary theoretically could do the same thing that BW just did, I think it's going to be very, very difficult for them to match that success that BW just had.
I also know that this team is an incredibly comfortable team on this specific map. They've played it a lot, especially with 4 of these 5 were on a team all of last semester and played it very well. And I know that Silent's team has very good proficiency on this map. So this is a map that is comfortable for a lot of players on this team, so it's going to be very good to watch this team play through. One of the other things that I will note is that there are no comp changes on either side, Cleary or BW. At that end, those same players are going to be playing the same things. We are going to be seeing the Widow Swipe actually come out for Cleary here, so they're going to be trying to get some oversight. But as we look ahead towards the actual fight at the beginning of the map here, we're going to be seeing BW playing around the same place that Cleary was, but one of the big things that I will note is that they are not giving up their space as easily as Cleary was. They are holding these the enemy team into that small room and even pushing out, going for the confirmed kills, as Satney will get right here. As we see the rest of the team playing around this central pillar, we're going to be seeing a lot of pressure applied onto Cleary. This may force out a retreat from Cleary, as it appears that they are looking to regroup, but BW is not willing to let them get away. They want to get these kills. They want to stagger this team.
Yeah, because if you get a kill after many of your team members have already died, or many of the opponent teams has already died, it makes it very difficult to regroup because the respawn timers are all out of whack. So it's very dangerous.
Yes, it's incredibly dangerous, and especially a team that is playing with this level of aggression, it is going to be very dangerous to watch. Now, one thing that I will be noting and looking out for is that we had a player from Cleary go up top left, and that is applying a decent amount of pressure onto BW here. And they're going to need to look towards some sort of response. However, it appears that they pulled them to a standstill, even though BW has lost 2 compared to Cleary's 1. They're holding them kind of to just the middle point, and that ult pop right there may be a little bit wasteful, but it does bait out a lot of ults from Cleary, with BW only going even in their ult usage. And what we look at, we are going to be having another ult here from BW, and that is going to be Silent on that blade, who is able to find a very good 2 picks, but it appears that it will not be enough. BW is going to have to concede and look towards holding in the payload segment.
But again, they did hold it longer than Cleary did, and so that does give them the time advantage going into the second point. The second point is, as we noticed for BW, it can be very difficult to capture, or very difficult to push as an offensive team, because if you do lose one team fight, it's very, very hard to come back and wipe that enemy team again. So I think that it's going to be that BW definitely is still in a good position. They just need to make sure that they can capitalize and make a decisive fight, as we've been talking about.
And one of the interesting things looking towards this, keeping the memory of last game still fresh, is the way that the 2 teams have gone about playing this first choke, especially. Cleary, not wanting to have the same thing that they were able to do to BW happen to them, has pushed incredibly far out. They're playing incredibly far up, looking to just keep the pressure on BW and leaving one on point, rather than going for the multi-on-point strategy, which will get the payload pushing faster. However, maybe a little bit less guaranteed pressure placed onto BW.
Those are some brutal stagger kills to come through at the very end there. Xylem and XGod status being taken down at the very last second, which does make BW's comeback attack just take just that much longer, but that time is very precious at this point.
Yep, and just as we were talking about how BW had a lot of time to work with, they were able to hold a lot of that time is going to be bled off with this first point. It's going to need to be BW winning this team fight, and although I like the jump onto the side, it looks like it is going to be a little all for naught as we look towards Cleary getting this point and now having 4 minutes to get that final, and that's just a little unfortunate there coming out from XGod.
I would say it's a tactical reset.
It's a tactical reset.
It's a tactical reset.
Yep. And as we look towards the end of this fight, we're going to be looking to see what exactly BW can pull together. They're going to have the ult from XGod, and they're incredibly close to the ult from Satni. Epic MU's ult is not incredibly far off, and neither is Sylem's, although those are going to be less readily accessible right now. We're looking towards Satni will just be losing the 1v1 against the tank. And the response ult from XGod, although not bad, is not going to be finding a ton of value, and they will even be getting picked. And BW is going to need to touch. They're going to need to do something, and it appears that they just barely be unable to. BBW going down 0-2 in this series as they look to make a full reverse sweep coming into the next set of games. And as we look towards that next set of games, we're going to want to look at those the plays from the last game, and we're going to want to be talking about what they did correctly, what we saw a lot of improvement on, and the little things that really made or break that game. And if we want to talk about improvements, it's their decisiveness in fights.
Absolutely.
They had several fights where it seemed like it started, it was over. Very confidently and very quickly, they were able to take control of those fights. The one thing that I will say, looking towards this next game, as we look towards potentially a player swap, actually, it appears that we're going to be subbing one out. We're going to be subbing out Xylem, our Genji player, in for Flowers. That is going to be Ben Dubé, who has been a very long-range hit scan player. I've seen them playing a lot of Widow, so I'd assume they would be either playing the Widow or the Ashe, and XGod staying in would be playing a lot of the Soj, playing a little bit more upfront scrappy, and Flowers playing further back. For this game mode especially, and for this map especially, Rialto, there are a lot of long sight lines that you can abuse on this map, so having a player who is able to play that dedicate sniper, and then having another player who's able to even still brawl at that long range is going to be very good. Focusing on that last map and focusing on those last fights, the decisiveness in those fights, some of those were very, very good, and some of those were just not it. I can't say it any simpler than that. There were fights that we attempted to win, we poured a lot of util into, and we just were not finding the response. And the fight after, we may have found the response, but there were a couple of times, especially at that first choke point, where it felt that we were going and we would hit a wall with the comp, and then we would try to do the same style of fight and we would hit a wall. And eventually we did break through. You know, we had a very good string of plays that led to us getting that point. But at that start especially, we were not having a lot of response. And one thing that I would even look towards, if I were in this game looking towards adaptations, is looking towards playing something more the style of Cleary. Cleary was playing in a style where they had one or two people stick on point and the rest of the team push very far up. They were trying to stagger BW, force them as far back as possible. And it was a method that was working incredibly well, especially for the style that they were playing, which is a style very similar to BW's. It's a sort of rushdown style. So, as we look ahead to this map, I would be looking towards potentially alterations like that, especially with what it looks like BW starting on the attack side. We're going to be looking towards them potentially being able to play that very fast style and potentially even sending people ahead in the line to try to hold off the defense of Cleary while we have one or two people stick on point and make sure that that payload is still moving.
And I think a key element of that playstyle that Cleary has been executing very well so far in this series is to ensure that those players that are back further if they start getting attacked by the enemy team, the Cleary's front line turns right back and is always there to support. And I think that's going to be a really, really key element for BW if they do decide to follow that plan. So now, as Jeremy mentioned just now, we are going into Rialto, which is the game type called Escort. So it's very similar to Hybrid, which is the game mode we were just playing on in King's Row, except something different is that there's no capture point. So we're just going to start right away. We're just going to start pushing that payload.
Yep.
And so, yeah.
Yep. And another thing that I would look towards when we're talking about this stylistic clash between these two teams, as I will save, we do have a swap up here. This is actually a very interesting team comp. I'm very excited for this. What I was going to say was the tank that BW was playing. We were playing the Junker Queen into that. Cleary was finding a lot of value playing the Ramatra, who's a tank that is very good at playing up close. One of his abilities turns him into melee only, but those melee do very, very good damage. And it was very good for that rushdown style that we saw Cleary playing, and what was getting them a lot of value on the first set of control and on payload. But now we're seeing a swap up from both teams. We're going to be seeing Sigma played here, who's a very interesting character to play. He has a lower style shield, but he also has an ability that essentially negates all incoming damage. Aside from that, we are going to be seeing an actually double long range style. We're going to be seeing X-God on the Widow, and we're going to be seeing Flowers now on the Ashe, who Ashe plays kind of as almost a hybrid between Sojourn and Widow, having a single shot long range gun, but not being tied down to the scope to be able to output high damage. Ashe can still do very good on that. And we're also going to be looking towards a similar healing setup to that last map. We're going to be looking towards the Lucio Baptiste, so a very good amount of sustain here. And as we're looking towards these fights, we're going to be seeing the power of that Sigma come out. That ability that he held out in front of him, his black hole, Vortex, is very good at just sucking up all damage. It gives him a health boost, and it keeps him safe for a little while. And although we see the tank going down, it's an incredibly good start from BW, a lot of good early damage, and the regroup here is not going to be that long. We're going to be looking towards a very quick regroup from everyone. We're going to see X-God status picking off one of Cleary's healers, giving BW potentially a little bit more space to work with as we look towards the tank being killed. And with Satni back here with the BW team, it's looking towards BW having a very confident start on this map of Escort, getting this first point down.
And another unique difference that we're seeing here on this map is the choice of Brigida by Cleary as one of their supports, which is just a very, very stationary type of support. Gives a more passive type of healing, less explicit, like strong burst healing like Baptiste gives. So, I mean, I'm kind of wondering why that is, but we can analyze that later as we are in the middle of a fight here. And as we can see, it looks like Flynn, the main tank Cleary, has gone down, and so BW is able to push the point through. What a shot!
And that was a shot from X-God. Yeah. Holy. This Genji in the backline will be a little bit of an issue. He will be dealt with, but that was impressive. Yeah. I have nothing else to say to that. That was a shot.
Well, one concerning thing about that previous fight is that both of our DPS, both of our snipers did go down, which means they can't take very offensive angles, and especially with Pancake's ultimate coming out. Well, both sides came out, so my point was going to be irrelevant. But the snipers really weren't able to take those offensive angles to try to force Cleary into corners they don't want to play out of. Cleary's kind of able to space it.
And as we see here, what would have been an incredibly strong ult from Satni here, the Sigma ultimate, which sets out an area within the map that if anyone is stuck in it will be lifted up and then dropped down. It will do a massive amount of damage. It's a very good area clearing ult. Although he was stunned out of it, that initial stall, because it was still able to get out and do a little bit of damage and lift people up, was still able to give BW a good amount of space, as they were able to get a fair number of picks here and still keep their fight alive. Although it is a little bit of a rotating cast as we wait for Satni to return to give us another full 5-5 for a reaggress, we're going to be looking towards the ultimate economy here. We have Flowers here with the Bob ult, which is going to be incredibly good, as Bob counts as another player when you're looking towards contest and you're looking towards just general man count. A 6v5 is incredibly good to play, and it doesn't matter what that 6th is doing, as long as they're putting that fire out, it's good. With the drop of Epic MU, it's going to be a little bit concerning here. That Bob call is going to be almost an almost instant response here. And we're going to be trading a lot back and forth here. It's going to be just really Flowers and Satney on that push. And as both go down, BW is looking at the regroup.
Something interesting in that fight is it looked like BW's, a lot of their firepower ended up focused on Flynn, which is the tank player on Cleary, which means that a lot of their damage is going to the healthiest character on the opposing team. So whereas on Cleary's side, it looks like they're focusing down a lot of the more squishy and less healthy characters. So I'm wondering if trying to focus down those squishy characters, if possible, might be able to give BW a different effect.
And another interesting thing to notice about Cleary here, there was a comp swap very late into the game. The difference was Cleary has chosen to whip out Kiriko for one of their healers in place of the Burrito. And the big difference between Burrito and Kiriko is that Burrito is a very good sustained healer, while Burrito is a very good burst healer. Burrito is able to play a more close-up style, whereas Kiriko has knives and really plays a more long-range style. And as we look towards BW getting fully wiped, leaving themselves with a minute 40 here, they're going to be looking towards a little bit more of a capture, but that instant pick from Pancake onto Flowers is not going to be the greatest thing that you want to see looking towards a BW capture. And it appears that there's just a lot of just scrappy fighting that is going down between BW and Cleary. There are confirms going here and there towards the sides of BW, but they're just, it seems too little too late. Satney being the only one left up front, unable to get the move or the save on himself, and that's going to leave a minute left for BW here. With Cleary having 4 ults and BW only having 2, it's going to be very, very important that they are able to get these ults not only out, but effective. The Lucio ult here and the Sigma ult need to provide a large amount of value if they want to look towards potentially pushing this to a 0.3, extending their side of attack. And then initial pick from Flowers is going to be a very good way to start things off here. As we look towards the move-in from BW, it's going to be a lot of highline stuff, but it appeared that that was all a bait. It got the Kiriko ult out, which improves the fire rate and healing rate of pretty much every ability in the game. BW was able to slip down and get the point. However, both supports, or both DPSs are going to be down, leaving only the supports and the tank contesting the point. And although this fight is great, we're going to need to see BW push towards that point. With 5 seconds left, we need to have someone on there ensuring that there is a contest. And Satney is there, but he is going to be taken out, and it's a full team wipe for BW. Now again, not the cleanest start, but a very respectable start to begin. And if they're able to play their defense as well as they were playing their defense on King's Row, we may be looking at a very, very competitive series here, looking at a potential map 4 and even a map 5, looking towards a reverse sweep. But it has to start here.
It absolutely has to start here. There's nowhere else to go. Back is against the wall here on Rialto. And one thing that is a little bit concerning to me is that I did notice that XGodZetis did make the switch to Sojourn very, very temporarily at the end of that map. And it does, it was before they even would have needed to go touch the point. And so it concerns me that BW may be starting to feel a little bit of a lack of confidence in their comp. And so I'm hoping that that's not the case, and that I'm just reading a little bit too much into it, which is very possible.
Well, speaking of a potential lack of confidence in comps, we have a couple of swap-ups looking here towards our what could potentially be final point in this series here. We have BW, who is actually, it looks that they're playing a very interesting style, electing to give up the initial bridge, but they will be playing Orisa, who has a little bit more health than Sigma, so our tank player here will be able to play sustain a little bit more. However, I'm unsure how much of a difference that is going to be felt there. Beyond that, we're going to be seeing still the double sniper comp come out from BW, but if we look towards the side of Cleary, they've chosen to go with the Winston instead of the Sigma, which is going to be very interesting.
I think this is going to be a very, very tough matchup for BW, because this dive composition, which likes to play very fast and get right on top of your team, it might be very hard to face with these two snipers against this Winston.
Yeah, this might be a read coming out from the side of Cleary. guessing that BW was going to go back to that double sniper comp and essentially saying that if you want to play double snipers, we will just play to anti that. And that's what we're seeing right there. A very fast dive onto the backline from Cleary means that two
Satney's
of the
going in.
But Satney, the initial instant response from the pushback. Although Cleary was able to get a lot of good distance on the first, BW is getting the response, and Satney is able to get the third and even gets the javelin onto the fourth. Although it won't quite kill, it still does a massive amount of damage. It forces Cleary to respect it. Satney, I think, just playing comfort roles at this point.
I think so too.
The man looks incredibly fluid on his Orisa gameplay. And that might be all that they need. However, Satney now hit with the Ana grenade that is going to give him the same effect that the Junker Queen ult was giving, that anti. So he will not be able to receive heals when that purple is around his health bar. However, that effect has worn off, so he's able to get healed back up by his support. And as we look towards this fight, it's a little scrappy, but BW is getting a lot of performance. We've seen another swap from the side of Cleary.
Oh, it doesn't matter.
And before I was even able to talk about it, Flowers just eviscerating the Tracer. Now the thing with Tracer is that it's going to play more into this dive style, playing this fast backline. So we could see it come out if and when the Tracer comes back, potentially getting a little bit more chip damage. But as we look towards the side of BW, although their backline is getting dove, they're getting a good amount of pressure. However, it appears that Cleary has figured it out with what appears to be a functional team wipe here onto BW. It's not a great sign to see, and we're looking to get Satney out right before those spawns change. And now this is where it's going to be incredibly difficult and incredibly important for BW to show what they are made of. 4 minutes left on the clock, and a push distance that does not take a full 4 minutes. So we need to see some stall and a few decisive team fight victories.
And those teamfight victories might be difficult to find here, as Cleary does have 4 different ultimates, including this Nano Genji combo, which is a very, very powerful combination. Nano, for those who are unaware, is Ana, which is smacks on Cleary's. That's her ultimate, and it basically supercharges one player and increases their damage output and decreases the damage they take. And that's a very, very strong, very, very well established combination within this game. However, I still think it's going to be difficult because Pancake still does have that pulse bomb, which does come out and only finds an immortality field. So
yeah, he's unable to find any player. However, what we are going to need to see, especially with XGod swapped onto the Soch, we're going to need to see some up close scrapping, which is Satney actually swapping onto the Doomfist last minute, looking to play a little bit more of this scrap. And if it's comfort rules, it's comfort rules. It's able to find the value. However, I wonder how much potential practice this has had in the comp, but it looks like he doesn't even need to show that. He is showing a very high level of mastery, taking out 2 on his own and forcing an entire team regroup from Cleary. Now that got very close. That got very scary.
That was very scary. But as you mentioned, it was some great hero plays from our tank player Satney, and I do think that this Doomfist may just be a comfort pick at this point because they just need something. They need something to stick. With only 3 meters left to go on this payload, this game is very, very, very dangerous for BW.
It is incredibly dangerous, and I think the big thing with Satney swapping onto this Doomfist is that it gives him a lot of that ability to play this very scrappy playstyle, this very up-in-your-face, which is what BW really needs at this point. That payload is pushed so far, you can't really afford to play this long distance as much as you were before, you know? You had a lot of giveaway. We're going to be seeing the ultimate from Satney coming out. It's just going to be giving him a little bit of health. But the turn on the Tracer is going to be a great pick to find, and looking for the support, unable to get the dive. Oh, and with that anti, that could be a very, very big thing. The immortality field will be able to save him, and he's able to get healed, bringing him back up, providing a little bit more pressure onto those healers. But Satney will eventually be going down, and it's never been a great sign. This BW team has been dropping their tank and then dying pretty often. However, you see the ultimate coming out from XGod, who's going to be getting a lot of damage, although no pure kills. We're getting a very large amount of pressure here. we're looking towards something on this Winston, able to get that kill, and Satney is instantly back, able to provide more of that response. Epic MU here as well, providing a large amount of damage, a big level of pushback. And again, 4 meters on that. These are getting incredibly close, and BW is able to hang with the pressure, roll with the punches, and keep it rolling. And with a minute left, Cleary is looking towards one team fight. BW has been very good at winning one team fight. They've done it twice already.
And that is one of the advantages of the Doomfist that we have here on Satney. Even though he did die relatively early in that fight, he was able to get back quickly because Doomfist is a very, very mobile character. So this is a very, very exciting final fight we have coming up here. We do have the Lucio beat for Epic Move, which could be massive against this Genji play.
However, we're going to see X-God status taken out, and we're going to need to see a response. That's going to be the tank for Cleary killed. And with Silent left, Window is popped, and Satney is deep in their team, but that ult from for Epic MU is going to be providing a lot of pressure and giving Satney a lot of power going into this last 19 seconds left. Satney will be picked off. However, he's going to be able to get the rollout very fast. The only thing is that BW needs to keep their contest up, and although they're dropping players like flies, X-God is still frying, but I think just barely. Cleary's going to take that. A 3-0, a very tight 3-0 though. It was incredibly close the entire way through. And as that series went on, we saw BW bringing that closer and closer and closer. It was unfortunate that the ramp up had to happen that late into the game. I think if they were given one more map, if this was a BO7, I think we'd be looking towards a incredibly different storyline with BW potentially making a full comeback. Now, as we talk towards the game and as we talk towards the rest of the future for this team, one of the things that we can talk about that I will give them big praise for, that they were doing very well, was when their back was against the wall, they were playing incredibly well. That final hold on Rialto, although it ended up crumbling, incredibly close. I think a 3-minute hold with 5 meters to push.
Yeah.
They played that tight, and they were able to show that. And although things got scrappy, they got close. It was incredibly good to see them be able to play it that close. It was unfortunate that the tightness of the series is ramped up. If we had seen that potentially come out map 2, where we were able to see that level of tightness come out, I would be thinking that we would be sitting here talking about a map 4 and talking about a potential comeback, because these last two modes that BW plays, I know they have incredible reps on push and flashpoint, something that we weren't able to see today. However, I hope that we will be able to in the future. I know they put a lot of time into, and they put a lot of pressure into, and they are teams that do a lot of great work, especially on push. Push is one of their incredibly good modes, and I am a little bit disappointed in the format that the league was, because other leagues that we have push as a midpoint, as a map 3. So instead of that escort, we would have had the push, which is something where I would be looking towards that and potentially saying that that is a turning point for BW, where they can get that get that aggression, get that refocus, and be able to move into whatever is next. And it's unfortunate that it was moved to later in the pool, because it means that BW is unable to get that sort of mental reset or sort of strategy reset that they would be able to in some of their other leagues.
Yeah, I mean, even though this series did end up being a 3-0 against BW, I do think that there are definitely things to be proud of in this series. Like you mentioned, that hold with only 5 meters left, some really, really great individual plays in that moment, some great team plays in that moment. I think that there's definitely some things, some positives to take from this game, along with some constructive things that they can build forward on. I'm really excited to see them moving forward.
I'm excited to see them too. And if we have to talk about the things to look forward to, the things to look to improve on, I think one of the biggest things that I can say, and I feel like you would tend to agree with me, was that decisiveness in fights.
Absolutely.
There were a lot of fights that dragged on, and that there was a lot of util that was invested that ended up resulting in a team fight win. But it may have taken longer than they would have liked. It may have taken much more resources than they would have cared to use. And it makes it very good to see, because they were able to bounce back from those fights that, you put a lot of resources in and you just don't get it. But then the next fight, you're instantly back and you instantly win. It's a great thing to see. But the fact that sometimes it took those fights, or the fact that it sometimes took an extra one on top of that,
Yep.
is something that is a little bit, something to work through in the lab, something to look towards and see, why was that the case? Was it misplaced util? Was it a miscall? Was it a misdirection? So that's something that they should have been focusing on. But if those things can be ironed out, when we saw them be decisive, it was incredibly fast. It was incredible. It was just, they were there and then they were all dead. It was that simple. Like,
Yeah.
it was some incredibly decisive gameplay that we were seeing when it was decisive. When things got scrappy, they tended to shoot a little bit more in Cleary's side, and I don't know if that's Cleary being able to thrive in the scrap more or BWU being unable to hang in the scrap more. I'm unsure as to exactly what that could be, because very easily it could be both.
Right.
You know, it's always a push and pull. It's always interesting to look at when you look towards these things. So when we look towards the rest of this season, BW isn't out quite yet. They still have games to play, they still have matches to run, and they still have a LAN to look to qualify for. I don't believe they've locked their spot in just yet. They are close to, but they are on that track. And I think one of the things to look forward to, looking to the rest of these series, is these things. When they play against these teams, it's important to look at these rosters that are that upper end of the spectrum, that upper end of the leaderboard in GLEC. It's important to look towards those and to see that it's like, hey, these are the teams that are going to be the biggest thorns in our side. How can we take our losses from them and move into the next? How can we move forward?
Right.
It's going to be very important, especially for the team, to be able to regroup and be able to move on from that. And as for us, that is going to be all for us today. That's our stream for today. Tomorrow, we have a good amount of games. If I remember, Saturdays is our big GLEC days. I believe we'll be having at least a Smash game, a Rocket League, and an Overwatch game. If I remember correctly, we'll be having all three. Potential doubles on some of those. I think Smash may have two, although I'm unsure. So, as we look forward to that, be sure to come back here tomorrow, bright and early, 10 a.m. if I remember correctly, is the start time for Smash. And then we'll be having stuff running until about 2 p.m. if I remember correctly, is start time for Overwatch. So we're going to be having a lot of games going on. So that is going to be all from me. My name has been Jeremy Planasek. This is Kyle Smith, my wonderful co-host. Thank you all for tuning in, and we will see you all next time.
Thank you, everybody.